Hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern. And today we're taking a close look at some strange new Pokemon that have been popping up around this mysterious shack out in the woods near Gravity Falls. Yes, you saw the thumbnail, so you know that today we are turning Gravity Falls characters into Pokemon. So without much further ado, and before Grunkle Stan realizes that I'm recording in here and not charging rent, let's hop right into it. First things first, if I sound sick, it's because I am. Allergies have been kicking my butt lately, but I really wanted to get this video out today because August 31st is canonically Dipper and Mabel's birthday. So with my newly acquired Book of Bill in hand and readying myself for some kind of new word on a Gravity Falls continuation or spin-off, let's take a look at our first Pokemon. I figure there's no better place to start than episode 1, Tourist Trapped. The gnomes of Gravity Falls make their debut appearance in this episode, and while they may appear as cute and cuddly creatures on the outset, they hide some dark secrets, and Schmebulok, who is an enigma all his own. So I wanted to capture that cutesy side of these little guys and give them an overall simplistic design that reflects their unassuming nature. They aren't the sharpest sticks in the woodpile, so I needed to ensure that they had little in the way of a super sentient type appearance. I made their eyes kind of hidden under this hat and rimmed by shadow to give off that slightly sinister vibe, as though they could be hiding something, and I went with a woodsy body type of motif because I knew that I wanted them to be grass type. The beard I played around with color-wise for a while, and ended up going with this minty green type of color. Ultimately, I'm happy with how this Pokemon turned out, and much like with the other mashup challenges, I am asking for your help.
I am once again asking for your support.
Let me know what the dex entry for these guys may look like. I'd love to hear what you come up with. You guys always do such a great job at figuring out kind of what the motif and base concepts are, and translating that into an ability, so I'm asking for your help. For the shiny, I went with colors reminiscent of gnomes found in memes like Crawly the Mall Gnome and You When You Were a Baby. That video still cracks me up to this day, and I guess I can't ask you for a dex entry without giving you this Pokemon's signature ability. In Tourist Trap, the gnomes boast powerful magic, like communicating with woodland creatures and vomiting rainbows. But their most fearsome ability comes in what I'm calling their Horde ability. I picture it a lot like Wishy-Washy, where the vast number of gnomes are able to pull themselves together into this massive giant. The trouble did come in that I didn't use very many colors in the initial design, so I had to find some way to break up the segments of this form. I used various gradients to get some of the aspects of this design down, like a furrowed brow and a vague overall shape, but it was the shadows that truly saved me on this design, as it allows Gnome Skull to feel more like a cluster than a single true Pokemon. The shapes were able to be kind of outlined and captured using those shadows and highlights. So here is Horde form Gnome Skull. This thing towers over the player, and the shiny makes it feel less like a prompt and more like a moving mountain. This form also gets a bump to its stats to give it just a little bit more oomph. And I know that gnome is spelled with a G, so I'm getting ahead of it before the comments do. I just wanted to make this feel more whimsical than an actual gnome, and have it be that the name was inspired by and not just a transposition of the term. Next up comes one of my absolute favorite characters from the series, but then again I always do kind of default to villains. So when turning Whittle Old Gideon Gleeful into a Pokemon, I knew there were a few aspects of his character that I needed to take on. Just looking at him, I knew that I had to use a pig as inspiration, as well as his whole televangelist vibe. And of course, I had to get the hair in there. There's no way that I could have done a design without taking that into account. Can't forget the hair. So I drew at this pig wearing a massive brain-like head of hair. It had to be a psychic type at the very least, and I wanted to expand on its silhouette to give it this flowing robe-like fur. I based a lot of that on sheep pigs, which are pigs covered in sheep-like wool, and I know that he doesn't wear his magical bolo tie throughout most of the series, but I really wanted to capture that because first impressions are everything, and that's really how we're introduced to the character. I of course had to make him blue, as his little suit is that same color, and it's as much a part of the character as his big ol' head of hair. I had this idea that long ago people once worshipped this Pokemon for its profound psychic abilities, but as time moved on it was forgotten for more powerful Pokemon. The theory was that the protrusion on its head was an outcropping of its brain, as its power was just too much to contain within its skull. But upon investigation, many townsfolk discovered that it was merely a dense collection of wool. It had been tricking them and scamming them the whole time to get this love and reverence from them. And now this Pokemon is hard to trust. It always seems to have some devious intentions at heart. For the shiny, I reversed its color so that the coat was blue and the rest of it was this grayish color, much like actual sheep pigs, and I gave it the normal type to kind of offset its abilities and better match the lore of what I was going for. And we couldn't have a Gravity Falls Pokemon Challenge without Grunkle Stan making an appearance. So for Grunkle Stan, I really tossed back and forth whether I wanted him to feel like a trainer or feel like a Pokemon, and I landed on Pokemon just because, again, being sick, I didn't have a ton of time, and I thought this will be a lot more interesting than just to draw a person as a different person in a different style. So for Grunkle Stan's Pokemon design, I went with something that matched his basic shape. I knew that it should feel vaguely human, but also have some texture to it, so I went with this idea and pulled in a few areas of inspiration, such as making it similar to the totem pole that resides outside of the Mystery Shack. It's always there, and while it doesn't have a huge point in the plot of the entire series, I feel like it is kind of the mascot for the Mystery Shack itself. I also wanted the body to feel kind of like a slot machine, otherwise known as one-arm bandits, and they're known to feel more like scams than actual games. Trust me, I know the feeling of being reeled into one of these things intimately. So I wanted to get that base shape for the body of a slot machine while giving it this motif and vibe of a totem pole. The shape of Stan's tie actually really allowed me to emphasize that idea on the chest while also doubling as an almost frown. It almost is one of those things that when you look at other, like, did you know Pokemon videos, the people might say, oh, the shape of the tie on the chest is actually meant to evoke a 7, much like a slot machine. But I don't know, it ended up being more of a happy accident than a purposeful thing. I decided to make this design a fighting type as Stan was always the brawler of the twins. And I gave this Pokemon the name Granstan, to reference Stan as Dipper and Mabel's great uncle with the term Gran, while sounding like grandstand, which is defined as the action of behaving in a showy manner in an attempt to attract favorable attention from spectators or the media. And that's kind of Grunkle Stan's whole thing, so it ended up working perfectly. I love the name Grandstand to the point that I actually follow it through into another design that we'll see in just a moment, but it just really fit, and I'm really happy with the way that this design turned out. Alongside Grandstand, we have its counterpart. In a game, I see these two as being version exclusives. I wanted to capture the trench coat that Ford wears in the show, as it has become a symbol of detectives and inspectors and researchers, much like he is. I also wanted to give the shape a lot of differentiation to Grandstand, with this design being more lean and flowy over Grandstand's more blocky physique. It feels a bit more alien and mystical to capture Ford's more mysterious nature, and I gave it these separating finger-like appendages to its coat, with, of course, 6 segments on each side, naturally. I also gave it these sci-fi type glasses, as opposed to the square ones found in its counterpart, almost like it always has triangles in its eyes. Like that's its main goal of capturing. Maybe it'll have some sort of connection to a Bill Cipher type Pokemon, but here, I think that the shapes really translate the idea of the character over the actual transposition of the shape of Ford. Regardless, I think this design brings in the inspirations of Ford over the shape of him. We have an alien or extra-dimensional traveler type of Pokemon in a trench coat-like skin, with these laser cannons that open and close with the 6 segments on either side. It really feels like the energy of Ford was put into play in this concept, and it's something that I feel, while it may not look exactly like Ford, I think it captures a lot of the ideas associated with him. So here we have Granford, the secret Pokemon, a counterpart to Grandstand. This is a psychic type with its attack and special attack swapped from what we saw in Grandstand's design as a counterpart. And yes, I understand that a psychic type is going to beat out a fighting type pretty much every time, but it just felt right to do fighting and psychic for these two, not because one would beat out the other in a fight every single time, but more so because they're meant to kind of work together. It feels like both an aged researcher in this design, as well as an extraterrestrial itself. It actually might fit in more amongst the UBs, but I think that's kind of the point here. It feels much more human, much more related to our world, but also like it could fit in amongst these extraterrestrial type Pokemon. He's just your average guy, but he hangs out with quite an interesting crowd. Let me know what abilities that these two, being Granford and Grandstand, might have and what their dex entries may look like. You guys are always so good about this, and I just want to bring it up again because I love seeing what you guys come up with. And if you want a little bit more input and conversation on upcoming videos, be sure to follow the Discord down below and check out the Ko-fi and Patreon for support options. We recently did another astrology signs as a Pokemon video, and that design was snatched up day one from Ko-fi. A lot of times I'll do a design, upload it there, and just put it out into the world, especially if it's something that I'm not going to use in my own region. So at the Patreon, I've also been drip feeding some info on videos and personal projects to the audience there. We've been looking at some of the trainers and professors for my region, the Kostawis region, and I'm really excited to show you guys what we've got going on. But Patreon obviously got in first. Okay, sorry, it looks like someone's getting upset that I haven't gotten to them yet. So I have got to stop making Pokemon that break the fourth wall and freely cross interdimensional lines. Besides, it wouldn't really be a Gravity Falls video without Bill, would it? This one was a bit more of a challenge. As I've explained in my Elden Ring bosses as Pokemon videos, it's a lot easier to trim down a design and simplify it into a Pokemon than it is to build up from a simple design. And it doesn't get much simpler than a triangle. So I tried to study what makes Bill Cipher, how to handle making him into a Pokemon without just drawing him as is and saying, there you go. Luckily, I was already looking at Rotom for an upcoming Five Nights at Freddy's as Pokemon video, and realized that there were some aspects that could work for Bill. See, Rotom has this energy aura that surrounds it made of electricity, and Bill is all energy. He's all aura. So I removed his hat and arms and legs and used this spectral energy to give those back, replacing what was a physical body with this energy. Whenever Bill makes a deal, his hands glow with this blue fire, and I'm looking specifically at the recent Learn to Draw video released by Disney. I decided that this bluish hue would go perfect for expanding on his design while still keeping the same basic build. So here is Psyfiend, the dimensional Pokemon. I used his black silhouette look to inform the shiny and made him dark ghost type. And I know, a lot of people might say fairy or psychic or even fire might work, but I don't know, it just kind of felt like this would inform a lot of other design elements and what I see this Pokemon functioning at. I mean, even the new stellar typing might stick well with this design. But his spooky energy, powers, and dark aura that he carries with him really felt like Dark and Ghost would be the pick here for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching, maybe I'm not reaching far enough. This one was a real stumper on abilities though, so maybe make something new and let me know what you think down in the comments. You guys are great at coming up with not just bringing in abilities that exist, but making new ones for these designs. Up till now, none of these Pokemon have had the ability to evolve. Maybe it's because they function better as standalones, or maybe I'm saving those for another video. Or maybe I've been absolutely destroyed by allergies this last week and have had to crunch as much into this video as I could stand before passing out. All of these options are just as likely, but regardless, I wanted to try something with Bill that alluded to his true form. In the series finale, Ben takes a number of new shapes, but this one has to be one of my favorite. The pyramid isn't a shape that we've seen a ton of in other designs, despite having so many out-of-place Egyptian-inspired Pokemon. I'm looking at you, Cofagrigus, Lucario, Sigilif, Unknown, and a ton of others. I also wanted to retain that aura, but expanding on it by giving Bill this many arms type of look, building more brick texture and that giant X from the sky of Weirdmageddon. Not so much an evolution, but a new form akin to Mega Evolution. I even used the same shading and line work style to see how it looked, and I think it works really well. But I picture this more of a permanent shape for Bill once meeting his evolution criteria. So while it does maintain the idea that this is the same Pokemon, it functions more or less as an evolution. For the shiny, I kept that blue color from before since it's now fully taken over the color of its silhouette, and I retained the typing, although maybe it could gain a new ability that changes that. I'd love to see an ability that changes the type of Pokemon that this is based on some previously met criteria. I feel like that really captures that chaotic and cryptic energy that it should have as a Bill inspiration. Let me know what you think down in the comments and join the Discord for info on upcoming videos, as well as being a part of a fun community of creators, artists, writers, and just all around cool people. With all that out of the way, I'm gonna go take some medicine, and it sounds like you know where to find me, so I will catch you in the next one. Bye.